You want to know what real terror looks like? It is not the sight of a supernova consuming star systems. It is not watching black holes devour entire civilizations. Real terror, my fellow beings, is the moment when Admiral Zek-Nine of the Galactic Council looked at his tactical display and realized what he had just authorized. The first law of the galaxy. Simple, clear, absolute. Never attack human children. And we broke it. My name is Commander Thex-4, former Strategic Intelligence Officer of the Hegemony Fleet. I was there when it happened. I watched the greatest military minds in the galaxy make the single most catastrophic decision in galactic history. And by the void between stars, I am probably the only one left alive to tell you this story. But let me back up because you need context. You need to understand exactly how monumentally we screwed up. 3 cycles ago, humans were nothing. A backwater species on a mudball planet, barely capable of splitting atoms without irradiating themselves. We looked at them the way you might look at ants building hills in your garden. Amusing, harmless, irrelevant. Then they discovered faster than light travel. Within 50 standard years, they had colonized 47 systems. Within 100, they controlled 300 worlds. They did not ask permission. They did not negotiate territory disputes. They simply arrived, planted their flags, and dared anyone to try removing them. The hegemony tried first. Our massive dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small moon, descended upon their early colonies like the fist of an angry god. We expected swift surrender, perhaps some token resistance before inevitable capitulation. Instead, we got Marcus Kane. General Marcus Kane was a human who looked like he had been carved from granite and disappointment. Gray hair, scars across his face like tally marks of victories, and eyes that seemed to calculate exactly how much ammunition it would take to kill everything in the room. Twice, Inter did not surrender. Inter did not negotiate. Inter strapped explosive charges to cargo ships and flew them directly into our dreadnoughts. He trained human children to repair weapons while their parents died in foxholes. He turned every human colony into a fortress, every human citizen into a potential combatant. But here is what made Kane truly dangerous. He had rules. Human military doctrine, we learned, contained strict protocols about civilian casualties, about proportional response, about the treatment of prisoners, about protecting non-combatants, especially children. Kane would burn entire hegemony fleets to ash, but if one of our escape pods contained injured soldiers, those soldiers would receive medical treatment in human hospitals. Kane would siege our positions until his own troops were eating boot leather, but if civilians were present, he would find another way. The other galactic powers noticed. The Meridian Collective tried next, sending their bioships to consume human worlds. Those ships came back as twisted metal sculptures, and the Collective never explained what the humans had done to their living vessels. The whispers suggested Kane had figured out how to make the bioships eat themselves. The Void Speakers attempted a psionic assault. Their mind-weavers, beings capable of driving entire civilizations insane through concentrated telepathic torture, targeted human command structures. Kane sent them back catatonic. 3 more major powers tried and failed to contain humanity's expansion. Each time, the humans won through a combination of tactical brilliance, unhinged creativity, and what could only be described as weaponized spite. But they always followed their rules. So the Galactic Council, in what was supposed to be wisdom, established the Accords of Sustainable Warfare. Fancy words for a simple concept. If you are going to fight humans, you play by their rules. No targeting civilians. No biological weapons. No orbital bombardment of populated areas. And absolutely, under no circumstances, do you harm human children. This was not sentiment. This was survival. Because the one time someone tried to break those rules, Marcus Kane personally led a fleet of human warships to their homeworld and glassed the entire northern continent. Not as a strategic necessity, as a message. The message was received. For 20 years we had what historians now call the stable conflict period. Humans expanded, we fought them. They won most of the time, but casualties were manageable. Territory changed hands according to established patterns. Prisoners were exchanged. Civilians were spared. Both sides honored the accords. Kane retired, but his successors maintained his policies. Admiral Jessica Torres, Colonel David Park, General Rebecca Stone. Different faces, same uncompromising adherence to rules of engagement that made humans terrifying but predictable. Then came Admiral Sarah Mitchell. Mitchell was everything Kane was not. Young where Kane was weathered. Diplomatic where Kane was blunt. She attended peace conferences. She negotiated ceasefires. She actually smiled during formal dinners with alien dignitaries. The Galactic Council thought she represented a new era of human leadership, more reasonable, more civilized. They were catastrophically wrong. Mitchell was not softer than Kane. Mitchell was Kane with better public relations and exponentially more dangerous ideas about acceptable losses. But even Mitchell maintained the rules. Even Mitchell protected human children with the same fanatical intensity as her predecessors. Which brings us to Kepler 442b. Kepler 442b was a human agricultural world. Population roughly 2 million. Strategic value minimal. The planet produced foodstuffs and manufactured basic industrial components. No major military installations. No strategic resources. The perfect target for what Admiral Zek-Nine called a demonstration of resolve. The hegemony had been losing territory for 6 months. 3 major systems. 17 mining colonies. Our military command was facing political pressure to show strength, to prove that humanity could still be challenged. Zek-Nine proposed a limited strike, fast assault, minimal casualties, capture key infrastructure, force human withdrawal, demonstrate that the Galactic Council still possessed military relevance. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. It Kepler 432b with overwhelming force. Rus immediate surrender. Use captured civilians as leverage to negotiate favorable terms for territorial disputes in the Vega sector. I was in the command center when Zek-Nine presented his strategy to the full council. Representatives from 8 major galactic powers. Military leaders commanding fleets that could sterilize star systems. The target is isolated, Zek-Nine explained, his forearms gesturing at holographic displays showing human defensive positions. Minimal orbital defenses. No capital ships in system. Local garrison consists of 2 light cruisers and a handful of patrol craft. We can secure the planet in under 6 hours. Council Prime Veth Alpha nodded approvingly. Human response time. Minimum 48 hours for any significant relief force to arrive. We will have established positions and fortified our foothold long before Admiral Mitchell can mount a counterattack. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like exactly the kind of limited engagement that had characterized human-galactic relations for 2 decades. There was one problem. Kepler 442b was home to the largest human educational complex in the Outer Rim. 15,000 human children, ages 5 to 17, attending advanced learning institutes spread across the planet's northern continent. The intelligence reports mentioned this. Buried in subsection 4 alpha of the planetary analysis, there was a notation about educational infrastructure and non-combatant population centers. Admiral Zek-Nine read those reports. He dismissed the significance. Acceptable collateral risk, he declared. Human children are non-combatants. They will not interfere with military operations. Standard non-engagement protocols will apply. I remember the exact moment everything went wrong. It was during the 3rd hour of the assault. Our forces had secured the primary spaceport and 2 major cities. Resistance was lighter than anticipated. Human garrison troops were conducting a fighting withdrawal toward prepared positions in the southern mountains. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Then Lieutenant Hex 7, commanding our northern assault group, transmitted a priority communication. Command, we have a situation at grid reference 47 North. Human children are manning defensive positions. The silence in the command center stretched for exactly 43 seconds. I counted. Zek-Nine activated the tactical feed from Hex 7's position. On the main display, we watched human children, some barely old enough to hold the weapons they carried, firing on our advancing troops from improvised fortifications around their school compounds. Not shields or human soldiers. The children themselves. They had been organized, trained, given weapons appropriate to their size and strength. Older students directed younger ones. Teachers coordinated defensive sectors. Human military doctrine had been adapted for combatants barely tall enough to see over their barricades. "Sir," Hex-7 continued, his voice tight with growing panic, "they are not retreating. Repeat, human children are actively engaging our forces. Request immediate guidance." Admiral Zek-Nine stared at the display. His tactical mind, trained for decades in conventional warfare, simply could not process what he was seeing. Human children were supposed to be protected non-combatants. They were supposed to evacuate. They were supposed to surrender. They were not supposed to be killing his soldiers. "Sir?" Hex-7 pressed. "Multiple casualties in my assault companies. These children, they know what they are doing. This is not random resistance. This is coordinated military action." On the tactical display, a 10-year-old human girl with pigtails threw something that vaporized an entire squad of hegemony shock troops. Council Prime Veth Alpha leaned forward in his command chair. "Admiral, what are your orders?" And here, my friends, is where everything went to hell. Zek-9 had three options. First, withdraw immediately and accept the political consequences of a failed operation. Second, redirect assault forces away from areas containing human children and complete the mission with reduced objectives. Third, authorize engagement with all targets, including human children actively participating in combat operations. Option 1 meant political disgrace and probable court-martial. Option 2 meant accepting partial failure and minimal strategic gains. Option 3 meant breaking the first law of the galaxy. Zek-9 chose Option 3. "All assault commanders," he transmitted, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was authorizing. "You are cleared to engage all combatants regardless of age classification. Repeat. All hostile forces are designated legitimate military targets." The transmission went out across our entire fleet. 15,000 soldiers, 300 ships, 8 species of allied forces. Every single one of them heard Admiral Zek-Nine authorize the targeting of human children. Lieutenant Hex-7 acknowledged the order and resumed his advance. For the next 4 hours, hegemony forces systematically engaged human children defending their schools, their homes, their planet. The fighting was brutal. The children fought with the same uncompromising ferocity as adult human soldiers. They did not surrender. They did not retreat. They made our troops pay for every meter of ground in blood and ammunition. By the time we secured the northern continent, over 8,000 human children were dead. Mission accomplished. Kepler Fortibor 2b was under Galactic Council control. Admiral Zek-Nine transmitted a victory report to the Council chambers on Nexus Prime. Then we waited for the human response. The first sign that something was wrong came 18 hours later, when our long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements throughout human space. Not just military vessels. Everything. Cargo ships, passenger transports, mining barges, even civilian pleasure craft. Every human ship in the galaxy was moving toward Council territory. "Sir," reported Sensors Chief Kex-2, "I am reading approximately 40,000 human vessels converging on our position from multiple vectors. Estimated arrival, 60 hours. 40,000 ships. The largest fleet movement in recorded galactic history." Admiral Zek-Nine maintained his composure. "Standard defensive preparations. Alert all Allied commands. Human counterattack is imminent but expected." But I was watching the sensor readings more carefully than Zek-Nine was. Those 40,000 ships were not just military vessels. They were everything humans could put in space, and they were all armed. Cargo ships carrying missile pods. Passenger liners bristling with improvised weapons. Mining vessels equipped with kinetic bombardment systems. The humans had militarized their entire civilian fleet. 6 hours later, we received a transmission. Single source. Human frequencies. Admiral Sarah Mitchell appeared on our main display, and I realized immediately that this was not the diplomatic Mitchell who attended peace conferences. This was something else entirely. Mitchell's uniform was perfectly pressed. Her gray hair was pulled back in regulation style. Her hands were folded neatly on the table before her. She looked directly into the camera with the same expression Kane might have worn while selecting targets for orbital bombardment. Admiral Zek-Nine Mitchell began, her voice conversational and pleasant. "I want to thank you for your recent visit to Kepler 442b. The educational experience you provided for our children was illuminating." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. "I am sure you are familiar with human military doctrine regarding the protection of non-combatants, particularly children. You are probably wondering how we will respond to your decision to authorize lethal force against human citizens under the age of 18. Another pause. Longer this time. "Allow me to clarify our position." Mitchell reached beneath her table and produced a data pad. She consulted it briefly, then continued. "As of this moment, every human military commander has received updated rules of engagement. The Accords of Sustainable Warfare have been formally terminated by Human Command Authority. All previous limitations on targeting, weapons usage, and operational scope are hereby rescinded." My blood turned to ice water. "Furthermore," Mitchell continued, "the protection previously extended to Council civilian populations is revoked. All Council worlds, stations, and vessels are now classified as legitimate military targets." She set down the datapad and looked directly into the camera. "You killed our children, Admiral. Now I am going to show you what we do to civilizations that kill our children." The transmission ended. 24 hours later, the humans arrived. And my friends, what happened next was not war. It was extermination. You know what the difference is between war and extermination? War has objectives. Extermination has only one goal: making sure nothing survives to remember what happened. The humans taught us this distinction in the most educational way possible. When the first wave of human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of our defensive perimeter, Admiral Zek-Nine actually smiled. 40,000 vessels sounds impressive until you realize that most of them were converted civilian craft. Cargo haulers with welded-on weapon mounts, passenger ships bristling with missile pods, mining vessels that had been turned into kinetic bombardment platforms. Desperate improvisation, Zek-Nine declared to the assembled command staff. They have thrown together a fleet from whatever they could find. Quantity over quality. We will destroy them in detail. I was monitoring long-range sensors when the humans began their approach. Standard formation flying, predictable attack vectors. Nothing unusual about their tactical deployment. Then they opened fire. The first salvo consisted of approximately 15,000 missiles, not military-grade warheads. These were mining charges, industrial explosives, cargo container bombs, the kind of crude ordnance you would expect from hastily converted civilian vessels. Our point defense systems tracked and eliminated 97% of the incoming projectiles. A few dozen impacts against our outer hull plating. Minimal damage. Exactly what you would expect from amateur-hour improvisation. "See?" Zek-Nine gestured at the tactical display showing our intact fleet formation. "Human desperation. They are trying to overwhelm our defenses with volume, but their weapons are insufficient to penetrate military-grade shielding." The second salvo arrived 30 seconds later. This time, the missiles were different. Military specification. Armor-piercing warheads. Shield-penetrating technology that we had never seen before. And there were 50,000 of them. Our point defense systems managed to stop maybe half. The impacts that got through did not just damage our ships, they disintegrated them. Entire destroyers vanished in single explosions. Cruisers broke apart like they were made of paper. Our flagship's shields collapsed completely, and we started taking direct hits to critical systems. "Sir," Tactical Officer Next 6 reported, his voice climbing toward panic, "human weapons are significantly more effective than intelligence projections indicated. Recommend immediate withdrawal to secondary defensive positions." Zek-Nine stared at the display showing 12 of our ships already reduced to debris fields. "How?" "Our intelligence clearly stated that human missile technology was inferior to Council standards." That was when I realized what the humans had done. "Sir," I interrupted, "the first salvo. It was not an attack. It was reconnaissance." Zek-Nine turned to look at me with the expression of someone who was beginning to understand exactly how badly he had miscalculated. "They used civilian-grade ordnance to test our defensive capabilities," I continued. "Response patterns. Shield frequencies. Point defense reaction times. Then they adapted their real weapons accordingly. The third salvo contained 80,000 missiles. Our point defense systems, now calibrated to expect civilian-grade ordnance, were completely overwhelmed by military warheads specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses the humans had just identified. Half our fleet died in that exchange. But Admiral Sarah Mitchell was just getting started. The human ships that survived our return fire did not retreat to safe distance and regroup. They accelerated directly toward our remaining vessels. Ramming speed. No concern for their own survival. "They are going to ram us," Sensors Chief Kex-2 reported with the kind of detached amazement you might use when observing a particularly spectacular natural disaster. "Impossible," Zek-9 replied. "No military commander would order suicide attacks on such a scale. The loss of personnel alone." A converted human cargo vessel, its hull glowing red-hot from our defensive fire, slammed directly into the heavy cruiser Dominion's edge. The impact alone should have destroyed both ships. Instead, the cargo vessel exploded like a miniature star. The explosion vaporized the Dominion's edge and took 3 nearby destroyers with it. "What kind of cargo were they carrying?" someone asked. "Antimatter," I answered, because I was reading the sensor analysis in real time. They loaded civilian cargo ships with antimatter and used them as guided bombs. That was when we started receiving distress calls from other sectors. The 40,000 human ships we were engaging were not the only human fleet in space. They were just the distraction. While we focused on defending against what appeared to be humanity's primary assault force, 3 other human fleets had simultaneously attacked Council holdings throughout the galaxy. Not military targets. Everything. Admiral Mitchell had not been lying when she said the Accords were terminated. The humans hit civilian colonies, trading stations, diplomatic outposts, refugee centers, mining operations, agricultural worlds, research facilities, cultural preservation sites, everything with a Council signature. And they did not just attack these locations. They sterilized them. The reports coming in from across Council space painted a picture of systematic annihilation that made our assault on Kepler 4Q2b look like a minor skirmish. Human fleets were using weapons we had never seen before. Kinetic bombardment systems that could crack continental plates, viral agents that dissolved organic matter, nanomachine swarms that consumed metal infrastructure. "Sir," Communications Officer Prix-3 reported, his voice barely steady, "I am receiving emergency transmissions from 17 different systems, all reporting human attack fleets, all requesting immediate military assistance." "What are they saying?" Zek-9 demanded. "Nothing coherent, sir. Most transmissions cut off mid-sentence. The few complete reports." X3 paused, consulting his displays. Meridia 7 reports total orbital bombardment. Population centers eliminated. Industrial infrastructure reduced to molten slag. No survivors detected. Another pause. Hegemony Mining Station 12 reports human boarding parties. No conventional assault. They somehow materialized inside our defensive perimeter. Station crew found, "Sir, they found evidence of human soldiers who had been dead for several hours before the attack began." Zek-9 and I exchanged glances. "Explain that report." "Unknown, sir." Station security recordings show human troops moving through corridors, eliminating resistance, completing objectives. But medical scans of the bodies indicate they had been clinically dead for at least 6 hours before the attack commenced. The humans had weaponized their own dead. That was the moment I realized we were not fighting a military campaign. We were fighting an extinction event with a personal grudge. The battle around Kepler 442b continued for another 8 hours. Our remaining ships fought with everything we had. Advanced weapons systems, superior tactical coordination, decades of military experience. None of it mattered. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like an immune system responding to an infection. No concern for losses. No strategic limitations. No rules of engagement beyond complete elimination of the target. When our ammunition ran low, they rammed us with ships loaded with antimatter. When our shields failed, they deployed boarding parties that fought with weapons that seemed to violate basic physics. When our communications were cut, they used our own frequencies to broadcast the sounds of our dying crews back to Council Command. But the worst part was not the dying. The worst part was the realization that this was not random violence. This was planned, organized, systematic. The humans had been preparing for this exact scenario. Every weapon system they deployed had been specifically designed to counter Council military technology. Every tactical maneuver exploited weaknesses in our standard operating procedures. Every target they hit had been selected to maximize psychological impact on Council leadership. They had been planning to break the Accords themselves. They had just been waiting for us to give them justification. Admiral Zek-Nine finally admitted defeat when our flagship started breaking apart around us. The human boarding parties had somehow bypassed our security systems and were fighting their way toward the command center. We could hear the weapons fire getting closer. Evacuation protocol, Zek-Nine ordered. All remaining personnel to escape pods. Prepare to abandon ship. Sir, I pointed out. Human doctrine regarding prisoners of war was established under the Accords. The Accords no longer exist. Zek-Nine considered this. Are you suggesting they will not accept surrender? I am suggesting they will accept surrender and then demonstrate why surrender was not a viable option. We launched in the last functional escape pod as our flagship exploded behind us. The humans could have destroyed us easily. Instead, they let us reach the nearest Council outpost. I think they wanted witnesses. The outpost at Nexus Station had been one of the most heavily fortified positions in Council space. Overlapping defensive fields, multiple capital ship squadrons. Enough firepower to sterilize solar system. When we arrived, Nexus Station was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The humans had somehow disassembled the entire structure at the molecular level. 12 million tons of military hardware reduced to component atoms floating in space. But they had left the personnel alive. 700,000 Council military and civilian personnel floating in individual life pods, arranged in a perfect sphere around the location where Nexus Station used to exist. Each pod equipped with enough life support for exactly 72 hours. Enough time for rescue ships to arrive. Enough time for the survivors to be recovered. Enough time for them to report what they had seen. The humans had turned 700,000 witnesses into a living monument to Council defeat. In the center of the sphere they had left a single message buoy. Standard Council frequencies. Admiral Sarah Mitchell's voice. Admiral Zek-Nine, this message is specifically for you. I want to make sure you understand the situation clearly. A pause, while the magnitude of what surrounded us sank in. You have been wondering, I imagine, how we developed such effective countermeasures for Council military technology so quickly. How we were able to coordinate simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems. How we managed to deploy weapons systems that your intelligence services had never encountered. Another pause. Longer this time. The answer is simple. We have been at war with you for 23 years. You just didn't realize it. I felt something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. Every peace conference I attended was a reconnaissance mission. Every diplomatic exchange was intelligence gathering. Every cultural exchange program was an opportunity to study Council technology, tactics, and strategic thinking. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Every time your representatives toured human facilities, they were seeing exactly what we wanted them to see. Every time you observed human military exercises, you were watching carefully orchestrated theater designed to reinforce your preconceptions about human capabilities. Admiral Sarah Mitchell had been planning this war for over 2 decades. The Accords of Sustainable Warfare were not an agreement between equals. They were a constraint we accepted in exchange for time. Time to study you. Time to learn your weaknesses. Time to develop weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. The humans had never intended to honor the Accords permanently. They had used them as cover while they prepared for total war. You killed 8,000 of our children, Admiral. That was unfortunate for them. But it was extremely fortunate for us, because it gave us the justification we needed to stop pretending we were interested in coexistence. The message continued, but I stopped listening. I was too busy calculating exactly how thoroughly we had been manipulated. 23 years of careful deception. 2 decades of letting us believe we understood human capabilities while they studied ours. An entire generation of human military leadership trained specifically for the war they had always known was coming. The humans had not broken the accords in response to our attack on Kepler 442b. They had been planning to break the accords all along. They had just been waiting for us to give them a reason that would justify unlimited warfare to their own civilian population. We had walked directly into a trap that had been 2 decades in the making. And Admiral Sarah Mitchell was not finished with us yet. The message board contained detailed intelligence reports on every major Council military installation, trade route, and strategic resource. Everything we thought was secret. Everything we believed was secure. The humans knew it all. Phase 1 of our campaign is now complete. Mitchell's voice continued. All major Council military assets have been eliminated or neutralized. All strategic infrastructure has been destroyed. All civilian populations have been relocated to temporary facilities pending final disposition. Phase 1. This had been Phase 1. Phase 2 will commence in 72 hours. I suggest you use that time to contact any remaining Council leadership and explain your situation clearly. The message ended with coordinates. A location in neutral space. A meeting point. Admiral Zek-Nine, the final message continued. You have 72 hours to arrange a full surrender of all remaining Council forces and territories. If you fail to meet this deadline, Phase 2 will demonstrate why Phase 1 was the merciful option. The transmission ended. I looked at Admiral Zek-Nine, who was staring at the display showing 700,000 of our people floating helplessly in space, and realized that everything we thought we knew about humans had been wrong. They were not honorable warriors who fought by rules. They were apex predators who had learned to mimic honor until they no longer needed the disguise. And now they were going to show us what they had been hiding. You want to know what Phase 2 was? Phase 2 was not about destroying our military. Phase 2 was about making sure we could never threaten human children again. Ever. The 72 hours passed like a countdown to the end of everything we thought we understood about reality. Admiral Zek-Nine spent those hours frantically contacting every surviving Council member, every remaining military commander, every political leader who might still be alive. The responses he received painted a picture of total collapse. The Meridian Collective extinct, not defeated. Extinct. The humans had deployed some kind of bioweapon that targeted their specific genetic markers. 12 billion meridians reduced to organic paste in under 6 hours. The void speakers, silent. Their entire psionic network had been somehow severed. Every mindweaver in their hierarchy found dead at their meditation stations, their brains apparently liquefied from the inside out. The Hegemony High Command vanished. Not killed. Vanished. Their homeworld was intact, their cities were undamaged, but every single member of their leadership class had simply disappeared. Their offices still contained warm meals, their personal effects remained undisturbed, but the people themselves were gone. By the end of the 72 hours, Admiral Zek-Nine was the highest-ranking Council official still alive and accounted for. That was when Admiral Sarah Mitchell contacted us directly. She appeared on our communications display exactly 72 hours after her ultimatum, down to the second, still wearing her perfectly pressed uniform, still maintaining that pleasant diplomatic expression that had fooled us for decades. Admiral Zek-Nine, she began, I trust you have used the time productively to contact your fellow Council members. Zek-Nine straightened his shoulders with what remained of his dignity. Admiral Mitchell, I am prepared to discuss terms for Council surrender. However, I must point out that many Council leadership structures have been compromised. Full compliance with your demands may require additional time to... Mitchell held up one hand and Zek-Nine stopped talking immediately. Admiral, I think there has been a misunderstanding. I did not contact you to discuss surrender terms. I contacted you to explain Phase 2. She consulted a datapad. The same casual gesture I had seen her make dozens of times during diplomatic conferences. Phase 1 was military conquest, elimination of Council armed forces and strategic infrastructure, standard warfare, albeit somewhat accelerated for efficiency purposes. She looked directly into the camera with those same gray eyes that had smiled at peace negotiations. Phase 2 is more comprehensive. The display behind Mitchell changed, showing a three-dimensional map of Council space. Every star system, every inhabited world, every space station and outpost, all of them marked with red targeting indicators. Phase 2 addresses the fundamental problem with our relationship, Mitchell continued, which is that you exist. I felt the blood drain from my face. You see, Admiral, military defeat is temporary. Governments can be rebuilt. Armies can be reconstituted. Leadership can be replaced. But as long as council civilizations continue to exist, there remains the possibility that someone, someday, might decide to harm human children again. She touched something on her datapad, and the red indicators began flashing. We find this possibility unacceptable. You cannot, Zek-Nine began. You cannot be suggesting complete extinction of all council species, Mitchell interrupted. Yes, Admiral, that is exactly what I am suggesting. Not just your governments. Not just your militaries. Your entire civilizations. Every man, woman, and child of every species that participated in the attack on Kepler 442b. The display showed numbers, population counts for every council world, billions of beings, trillions of lives, all marked for termination. This is genocide, Zek-Nine whispered. Yes, Mitchell agreed pleasantly. It is. We prefer to think of it as comprehensive species-level protective measures for human children. She touched her datapad again and new information appeared on the display. Countdown timers. All synchronized. All showing exactly 6 hours remaining. Phase 2 will commence simultaneously across all council territories in precisely 6 hours. We have calculated the optimal deployment pattern to ensure complete biological sterilization of all targeted worlds. No survivors, no refugees, no possibility of reconstitution. You must understand, Zek-Nine, the man tried again. The beings responsible for the attack on Kepler 422b represent a tiny fraction of our total population. Billions of innocent civilians participated in supporting military structures that enabled the murder of human children. Mitchell finished. Admiral, let me be very clear about something. We are not interested in proportional response. We are not interested in justice. We are not interested in distinguishing between combatants and non-combatants. She leaned forward slightly. We are interested in making absolutely certain that no one in this galaxy will ever again consider human children acceptable targets. Please, Zek-Nine said, and I realized he was begging. There must be something we can offer. Some alternative arrangement. Some way. There is one option, Mitchell interrupted. For a moment hope flickered in Zek-Nine's eyes. You can choose how you die. The hope died immediately. We have developed several extinction methodologies for Phase 2. Some are faster than others. Some are more educational. I am willing to allow surviving council leadership to select the termination method for their respective species. She activated another display showing a list of what could only be described as methods of mass murder. Biological agents. Very quick, most subjects lose consciousness within minutes. Recommended for species with young populations. Kinetic bombardment. Somewhat slower, but ensures complete infrastructure destruction. Recommended for heavily fortified worlds. Nanomachine dissolution. Much slower, subjects remain conscious throughout the process. Recommended for leadership populations responsible for policy decisions. Temporal displacement. Instantaneous from the subject's perspective, but allows for detailed study of extinction events. Recommended for species we wish to examine more thoroughly. Each option included estimated timeframes, casualty projections, and efficiency ratings. Admiral Zek-Nine, Mitchell continued, you have 2 hours to contact all surviving council representatives and inform them of their options. Failure to respond will result in random assignment of termination methodology. This is insane, I found myself saying. You cannot murder trillions of beings because some of us made a mistake. Mitchell turned to look at me directly. And for the first time her diplomatic mask slipped slightly. Commander Thex-4, is it not? Strategic Intelligence Officer. Hegemony Fleet. You were present when Admiral Zek-Nine authorized lethal force against human children. I was, I admitted. Did you object to those orders? I hesitated. No, I did not. Did you recommend alternative courses of action? No. Did you at any point suggest that targeting human children might result in consequences beyond acceptable military risk? No. Mitchell nodded. Then you participated in the decision to murder 8,000 human children. You are not an innocent bystander, Commander. You are a war criminal. She turned back to Zek-Nine. Admiral, you seem to be operating under the misconception that this is a negotiation. It is not. This is notification. Phase 2 will proceed as planned. Your only choice is whether your people die quickly or slowly. The transmission paused while Mitchell consulted her datapad again. I should mention for context that Phase 2 has already begun. Zek-Nine and I stared at the display. The countdown timers you are observing indicate time remaining until completion, not time until commencement. Human extinction fleets are already in position around Council worlds. Termination protocols are already active. Impossible, Zek-Nine said. Our sensors would have detected fleet movements on that scale. Admiral, Mitchell replied. Have you learned nothing from the past 72 hours? We have been planning this operation for 23 years. Did you really think we had not developed countermeasures for Council sensor technology? She was right. Of course she was right. The humans had anticipated everything. Every possible response. Every defensive measure. Every escape route. We had been fighting a war against an enemy who knew our capabilities better than we did ourselves. However, Mitchell continued, I am not completely unreasonable. There is one species that will be exempted from Phase 2. Zek-Nine leaned forward desperately. Which species? Humans. The silence stretched for almost a minute. Admiral Mitchell said finally, I want to make sure you understand what has happened here. This was never about territory. This was never about resources. This was never about political control. This was about children. Human children who will now grow up in a galaxy where no one will ever again consider them acceptable targets. Human children who will inherit star systems where the idea of harming them has been completely eliminated through the simple expedient of eliminating everyone who might entertain such ideas. She stood up from her chair. 8,000 human children died on Kepler 432b. In response, we are eliminating every civilization in the galaxy that demonstrated willingness to accept their deaths as collateral damage. The math is quite simple, Admiral. 8,000 human children equal the extinction of 47 galactic civilizations comprising approximately 4.7 trillion beings. Mitchell smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. We consider this an excellent exchange rate. The transmission ended. 6 hours later, every Council world went silent. Not destroyed. Silent. Long-range sensors showed no signs of bombardment. No evidence of battle. No indication of struggle. The worlds were simply empty. Cities intact. Infrastructure undamaged. But no life signs anywhere. The humans had developed technology that could eliminate biological life while leaving everything else completely untouched. They had turned our entire civilization into museum exhibits. I am recording this message from a human detention facility somewhere in what used to be Council space. They have kept a small number of us alive as historical curiosities, I suppose. Witnesses to document what happened when someone made the mistake of harming human children. The facility is quite comfortable. We receive excellent medical care. The food is adequate. Our quarters are spacious and well appointed. The humans treat us with the same casual courtesy they might show to animals in a zoo, because that is what we are now. The last surviving representatives of civilizations that learned, too late, that there are some lines you do not cross. Admiral Sarah Mitchell visits occasionally. She has aged well in the 5 years since Phase 2, still wears her uniform, still maintains that pleasant diplomatic expression. She tells us about the colonies humanity is establishing on our former worlds, about the children being raised on planets where our species once lived, about the schools being built where our cities used to stand. Human children, playing in gardens that grow from the soil of extinct civilizations. She seems very proud of what she has accomplished. And you know what the truly terrifying part is? She is right to be proud, because no one will ever threaten human children again. Ever. The first law of the galaxy was simple: never attack human children. We broke it, and Admiral Sarah Mitchell made sure that no one would ever be able to break it again by ensuring that no one else exists. Sometimes, late at night in my comfortable cell, I wonder if the humans planned this from the very beginning, if they always intended to inherit the galaxy. If the Accords were never about coexistence but about buying time until they were ready to claim everything. But then I remember the expression on Mitchell's face when she talked about those 8,000 children. The genuine grief. The absolute fury. The complete commitment to making sure nothing like that could ever happen again. And I realize it does not matter whether they planned it or not. Because when you threaten human children, planning becomes irrelevant. Survival becomes impossible. And extinction becomes inevitable. My name is Commander Thex-4, last surviving strategic intelligence officer of the Hegemony Fleet. Final witness to the end of galactic civilization as we knew it. And if anyone anywhere, in whatever distant corner of the universe might be listening to this recording, I have one piece of advice. Remember the first law, because the humans certainly will.